Good morning, dear students. Today we are going to discuss the next essay entitled The Spectator Club, penned by Richard Steele. Richard Steele and Joseph Addison are the most famous pair of friends who jointly wrote several magazines and periodicals, especially The Spectator. Richard Steele was an Irish writer, playwright, and politician. He is remembered as co-founder of the magazine The Spectator with his friend Joseph Addison. The Spectator Club is perhaps Richard Steele's finest achievement. This essay was published in The Spectator. The Spectator was a daily composed by, or we can say written by, jointly Richard Steele and Joseph Addison. And the present essay, The Spectator Club, is one of the essays that was published in The Spectator. It is written by Richard Steele. In this essay, Steele has given an account of the members of the club. These members represent important sections of society of the contemporary England. Steele describes 6 of the members of the club. They are Sir Roger D. Coverley, Captain Sentry, Sir Andrew Freeport, Will Honeycomb, the clergyman, and the student of love. Steele talks about the first gentleman of his company, whose name is Sir Roger D. Coverley. The people who knew about the county of Sir Roger knew Sir Roger. Sir Roger D. Coverley was a man of extraordinary nature and had a good sense. He always found fault with the ways of the world, but this unusual nature never made him any enemies. Sir Roger had a unique capacity to please others or to make others happy. Sir Roger was a bachelor because he was disappointed in the love of a beautiful widow. Before this disappointment, Sir Roger D. Coverley was a normal, happy young man. He moved in society of important persons like Lord Rochester and Sir George Etheridge. However, after being ill-used by the widow, he lost all his joviality and interest in social life for more than a year. He became very serious. Gradually, his joviality returned. Joviality means happy nature. However, he grew careless about his dress, about his get-up. He wore a coat and jacket of a cut which was in fashion at that time. Now, Sir Roger was 56 years old but was quite hale and hearty. He had a house in village and town. He had such a good nature that people loved him very much. He also treated his servants well. He was also the justice of the quorum and showed his judicial abilities on the chair of the justice at a quarter session. Next, in turn, Steele has described another companion of the club. He is a lawyer. He was also a bachelor He was a man of sharp wit and clear understanding. He chose his occupation rather to obey the direction of his old father than to incline to his own tendencies. Yes, we can say in simple terms that this lawyer chose or elected this occupation of lawyer because of his father's direction to obey it instead of his own inclination towards this business. He took to the study of law in obedience to his father. He was more interested in the study of trauma and traumatic criticism. The philosophers like Aristotle and Longinus were well understood by him. His father used to send to him various questions on law in order to ensure his son's progress in legal studies. The son outwitted the father by getting them answered through a lawyer whom he had engaged for the purpose. Nobody took him as a fool, but only his friends knew that he had a great wit. He liked to read the books which were not of the age he lived. He was familiar with the writings, customs, actions, and manners of ancient writers, which made him a keen observer of the worldly affairs. He was a good critic. His real hour of business was the time of the play. The presence of an able critic among the audience would rouse the actors to give the best performance possible. Dear students, you might have read or you might have heard about the interest, about the hobby of a person, that we must elect or choose stream of our studies or discipline of our education according to our own interest and our own hobby. We should never go against our interest. We should never go against the voice of our heart, simply because we never excel, we never outdo, or we never succeed in our life if we go against our interests. This is what happened with this lawyer also. The lawyer elected or chose the profession of a lawyer simply because he was compelled by his father, simply because this was the desire of his father. Though the lawyer was interested in poetry and drama, but father compelled him. That is why he chose this occupation. You might have watched the movie Three Idiots. In that movie also the same thing happens. So success depends upon your ability. We must choose our career, opt our career according to our interest and hobbies, not according to the interest of our parents, of our teachers, of our friends. Simply because we can't swim against the waves. That means we can't go against our interest. Otherwise, the career will become a burden for us. Next in order, the author has discussed about Sir Andrew Freeport, who was a good businessman of London. He was very laborious, experienced, and had a great understanding. His knowledge of commerce was extensive. His huge. He had his own ideals. of the ways of enlarging a country's trade. He was of the opinion that a dominion may be extended by art and industry than by power, diligence, or hard work alone would help the country to gain things of permanent value, and sloth or idleness more than the sword had caused the ruin of many nations. He knew many short maxims. He had a unique art of speech, means he possessed a gift of gab. He was a self-made person and believed that England too could become richer than other kingdoms by methods which had so benefited him. After Sir Andrew Freeport, the author has described the merits of Captain Sentry. He was very courageous, intelligent, and had good understanding. He was such a man who had not received good consideration of his abilities, means his abilities were not recognized. He had been captain in military for some years and fought bravely on fronts for the nation. He left the army because, even though he rendered meritorious service, which anyone could see and appreciate, promotion did not come to him. Means his abilities were not, his talent was not appreciated or recognized in the military. That's why he left the service. He used to say that only that man could hold a position in military who gets over his false modesty. That simply means one who flatters the officers in army gets the promotion. He was of the opinion that it is cowardice to stand back modestly. Similarly, a man who failed to assert himself and demand what was his due was a coward. He was frank in speaking about the weaknesses of his officers. This frankness was a part of his character. Though he commanded many persons in military, he was never haughty. He never became a flatterer, although he obeyed his superiors. The author then talks about Will Honeycomb. Though he was old, there were no traces of the passage of time in his brain or in his person. He had an attractive personality and could impress women by his talks. He dressed well and was well acquainted with the history of every fashion that remained in vogue in England. Will Honeycomb was always interested in matters pertaining to women. In his conventions, he talked mostly of women, and rather we say, in his conversation, he talked mostly of women, their dresses, their manners, and their fashions. He had a good knowledge of history. He could tell that the hairstyles or hats of our wives and daughters resembled to those of the wenches of French kings. But the author says that he was a gentleman. Leaving the relations of women, he was an honest and worthy man. At the end of the essay, the author tells us about one of his companions who seldom waited him. He was a philosopher and clergyman. He lived a sacred life. He was very weak in constitution, means he was lean and lanky. He was physically weak. Because of his ill health, he could not fulfill the responsibilities which promotion in the church might have brought him. He spoke on divine topics with authority. He wished for the good of the world even after his death. So, dear students, we have discussed 6 of the members of Spectator Club. And these six members, they not only display their own characters, rather, through their characters, the author Richard Steele has tried his level best to showcase, or we can say to represent, the particular mannerisms of the society of that time. That's all for today, and have a nice day.